Hi, I'm Miu, and you have found your way to my first video in which I'm going to customize a doll. I've never really filmed anything like this before, so I'm very not used to doing voiceovers or filming myself. And especially in English, it's kind of hard for me, but I'm sure I'll get better in the future, so bear with me for now. Anyway, I hope you'll still enjoy watching me, so let's see what we're working with today. Today I have this super tiny Barbie Extra Mini doll, which I actually got gifted to customize. I don't know if you can tell or if you know these, but she's really super small, and I guess they're kind of a smaller version of these Barbie Extra Mini dolls. I've had an eye on them before because I think they have kind of interesting molds, and also for their size they have pretty good articulation. These smaller ones of course have less articulation, but still she has pretty good movement in her shoulder joints. The amount of clothes and accessories they give these, despite their size, is pretty impressive, I think. This one has this kind of sporty skirt with the stripes on the sides and this little tube top, and they even managed to give her this teeny tiny jacket that she can wear on top. She seems to be some kind of skater girl because her shoes are actually roller skates. I'm a real sucker for characters with roller skates. Whenever they have them, I just end up liking them at least 50% more. She also has this sports bag, which goes with her whole little sporty skater vibe. And she has these really giant heart-shaped hoop earrings. These cloud glasses are definitely my favorite accessory. And her hair is also really well and thickly rooted. And she even comes with her own stand. Okay, now that I gave her enough praise, let's talk about the things I don't like. Mainly the color choices I don't get. Almost nothing goes together, and many details look like they should have been painted or something because they're nearly invisible like this. The earrings are probably my least favorite part of the outfit. I don't know, they're just so big and chunky and they don't really look like they belong even on the doll. The hair is pretty nice. It has this tealish blue color with the pink strands in the front, and in the back they're purple. I just think they're a bit shapeless overall, so we can definitely do something about that. Her face paint doesn't really speak to me. It looks a bit flat, I think, and it's lacking personality. And also, I don't think her lip color matches her skin tone at all. I think a warmer color would be much better here, opposed to this light metallic pink. So my plan with the custom is not making her a completely new doll, but rather give her just a bit of a change so that she's still recognizable, but I guess it's more of a redesign of the original character. Because I like what we're starting with here, and I think with a few tweaks the design could just be made more coherent and cute. At first I will have to get rid of her clothes. These earrings just would not come out. I was only able to rip them out of her head with tongs. And the first thing I changed was fixing this too long strand of hair that has been itching me to cut the whole time. And the next step is getting rid of her face. So I'm using 100% acetone, and well, I planned to rub her face off with this, but for some reason it was just really stubborn, and well, I've never experienced this, but I really had to scratch it off. But yeah, eventually it worked. During this project you will see that a lot of things that shouldn't have been this hard kind of were, so you can prepare for that. The next thing that happened, because I was struggling so much to get the face paint off, I touched the body with the acetone, and the plastic on the body is usually different than the one on the face, and that meant that it melted and it kind of had cotton stuck to it, so I needed to sand that off before I could continue. After getting the worst off with some really fine grit sandpaper, I switched over to nail buffers to make the surface smooth. You can see that there is some white residue on the plastic because it was scratched, but the Mr. Super Clear will take care of that later. As you can tell, I have already masked off her hair, so she's now ready for her first layer. Some people like to do the shading first, and some people like to draw on the shape of the eyes first. I don't really have a preference, but this time I wanted to sketch the eyes first. I already had a very specific look in mind when I started drawing her face. I knew I wanted her eyes to be big and expressive and very cute, and I knew I wanted her looking off to the side. At this stage, especially with her hair masked off, she reminded me so much of Sunny Angels. Her eyebrows I wanted to keep fairly natural. In my mind, she's someone who wears a little bit of makeup, but just natural makeup, and that she has naturally very thick brows. Now this is kind of a headcanon of mine, but for some reason I just really imagined her to live in Barcelona. Maybe it is because I went there not too long ago, but they have this beach and then there are some paths there, and I saw people skating there. So yeah, I kind of imagined her skating at the beach, and that's just what she likes to do in her free time. Also, I think being Spanish kind of suits her, and with her slightly tan skin, she could very well be someone who just likes to spend a lot of time in the sun. And if you're Spanish, maybe you can suggest a Spanish name for her. Or are there even specific Catalan names? Because being from Barcelona, she would be Catalonian. Once I got the eye shape down, I started blushing a bit and shading a bit with pastels to soften everything up. I used very warm brown tones, and I didn't make the shadows too strong because I wanted her to have an overall very soft look. Next, I started whitening the scleras with my watercolor pencil. It always takes a while to build up. For her pupils, I really wanted to make them star-shaped. I love giving pupils unusual shapes, and she also has a star on her back, so it was very fitting. Her eye color I wanted to be a light hazel brown. It was also the eye color of the original doll, and as I said, I wanted to keep her the same character, but also I thought it was the best fitting eye color anyway. Her lips I made just a few shades darker and also gave them an orangey color, and I thought it was so fitting, and it is just so much better than the pink she had before. I slowly started using more darker brown colors to work out all the details. And I also made everything look more three-dimensional, especially with the shadow I added from the top lid. At this point I decided to also blush the body because the doll is so small that the Mr. Super Clear covered everything of her anyway, so why waste it? Next I switched to gouache paints, especially because I couldn't build up more white on the sclera, and I also redid all the details a bit. I used an almost black for this, but I mixed it a bit with brown so it wouldn't be too harsh. Most people like to use acrylic paint. I really like using gouache because you can correct your mistakes, and I feel like it also dries flatter so that you cannot easily see all the brush strokes. So I haven't really found a downside to that yet. I will just say that every time I spray Mr. Super Clear, I panic that it might ruin the face up because you know it activates when it gets wet, but so far that has never happened to me, even when I sprayed a lot. Another thing that I knew I wanted her to have was a cute little smile. So with white gouache paint I painted her some teeth. At some point the tiniest bit of paint must have landed on her forehead, and I don't know how many sprays of Mr. Super Clear that was ago, so she has a mole there now and I'm not mad about it. For her lip I wanted the middle part. I don't know what it's called, apparently it's the tubercle or something. I don't even know if that's right. I tried to look it up. I wasn't really successful. Yeah, let me know if you know what it's called. But you know when people have it pretty pronounced, like it goes down in a V shape? I wanted that. Next I wanted to give the iris some bright highlights, and I used my watercolor pencils for that. So I wetted them a bit and then I painted it on, but for some reason it came out very milky while I wanted more of a saturated and bright color, so I got rid of that again and focused more on getting the sclera white first. I tried the method with wetting the watercolor pencil again, but every time it would just look good when it was wet, but once it dried it would just turn very milky. So I decided to just take my yellow pencil and draw it on without wetting it. I felt like there was still some dimension missing in the eye color, and because I couldn't find any tones that were saturated enough for me, I decided to use this very rich golden orangey color and do some highlights with that. I didn't really plan to add metallics to her eye color, but now that I tried it, I thought it was just so perfect, and it just gave me those vibes when sometimes when there's light falling on brown eyes, they look kind of golden. I think it kind of nailed that look, so I was very happy with it. With black and dark brown gouache, I now worked a bit on getting more depth into the pupils and the eyebrows. With white gouache, I painted her reflections on the eyes and also the highlights on the cupid's bow and the nose. I like to use a lot of water with gouache and then rather repeat this step a few times, because the more water you use and the more diluted the paint is, the less brush strokes will be visible, and I like the paint to be very flat, and the same also goes for acrylic paints. And this concludes the face up. I must say I love how it turned out. It is exactly how I imagined it, so I'm very happy with it. The last step is just covering the eyes and the mouth with a shiny varnish. Let's have a look at her outfit again. I think the biggest problem it has is that there's too many mismatched colors, and I really want to push the sporty look. So the first thing I'm going to get rid of is the rainbow top, and I'd rather have a nice white top instead, but with the same cut. Since it is such a simple cut, I can just take it and trace it on a white piece of fabric without having to take it apart. This way I can still keep it and it will still be wearable, which I think is nice. So I traced it and I drew a new seam allowance around it and then I cut it out. I also marked where the ends would have to meet in the back because I wanted to sew on the Velcro in a slightly different way. To stop the edges from fraying, I just put on a very thin layer of craft glue. Remember when I said many parts of the project turned out to be a lot more complicated than they should have been? Well, this top was one of them. I really struggled to fold over the seam allowance because the fabric was pretty stiff. With a lot of heat and needles and cut and clips, I eventually managed to fold it over and to sew around it. I tested how it looked on the doll and I hated it. It was just way too stiff and the fabric was also pretty thick. My sewing job was very bad. It looked like it had been crafted by a kid. And then I accepted this fabric was just a bad choice. I then pulled out my giant box of scrap fabrics and began scouting it for every white fabric that I had. I found this ribbed fabric that I thought would look really cute, and also I found another one that wasn't as thick as the first one. The good thing about the ribbed fabric would be that I wouldn't need a seam allowance because it doesn't fray, but I quickly noticed that I had to cut it so small that it was kind of falling apart, so unfortunately I had to scrap the idea. So the whole process I had with the first one, I now did with the third fabric. This time I was able to fold over the seam allowance a lot better and I managed to fix it just with some heat. Here you can see the difference between the two. I think the new one looks much cleaner. Although it was holding up like this, I still wanted to add a seam because it would add some detail. My idea for this was to pick out a thread that was similar to the pink of her hair. I finished doing the seam with the pink thread and then I tested it on her and I did not like it. I don't know, it just didn't give me the vibes I was looking for. I don't know what it is, I thought it looked more girly than sporty, so yeah, it was just bothering me, and fast forward I got rid of the thread and replaced it with a white one. The Velcro was pretty hard to sew through, so I had to use tongs for that, and I sewed it on in a way where it would stick out on one side so that the fabrics don't have to overlap each other, so it is less bulky. I saw Lady Dynamite do that once. I don't remember which video it was, but yeah, definitely check out her videos if you don't know her. She does really great stuff. So next up are the skates. I really wanted them to work and I wanted them to have real wheels that spin. So yeah, I was really set on making that work. So the first thing I had to do was get rid of the old ones. This was the perfect opportunity to try out this. If you don't know what blue stuff is, it is by the same company that does green stuff, and if you don't know what green stuff is, it is a two-part putty, so similar to epoxy sculpt, but it cures kind of more bendy and it is very popular among miniature artists, like people that do Warhammer and that kind of stuff. Blue stuff is for creating reusable silicone molds, which is really awesome and I've been waiting to try this out. My plan is to use the wheels I cut off the skates and then use the silicone molds to make new ones out of resin. There weren't really precise instructions, but it was fairly simple. You just dump them in hot water and then wait until they get very bendy, and then you can press in whatever you want to make the mold of. I constantly had to push the blue stuff down because it kept rising to the surface, but eventually it got really soft and I could push the wheels in there that I kept. I now had to wait for it to get cold again, and in the meantime I could paint the details of the shoes white. I wanted the soles, the laces and the seams of the skates to be white, and the rest I kept purple because I thought the color matched the hair in the back pretty well. In the meantime, the blue stuff hardened and I was finally able to find out if it actually worked. It was a bit fiddly to get the wheels out of there, but when I was finished, it looked really good. I think this is amazing because I'm probably not using these molds anymore, and this way I didn't waste any silicone and I can just put it in hot water again once I need another mold. I noticed that the skates had the Barbie bee at the bottom of the soles, which I thought was such a cute little detail, so I decided to paint that white too. Don't you think the skates look so much better already? So now it was time to actually make the resin wheels. I was thinking about maybe making them pink or blue to match the hair, but I decided to make them white instead. I used just a tiny little bit of alcohol ink because one time I used too much and then it cured really bendy and it was just not very nice, so I tried to keep it at a minimum. As a result, it looked a little bit transparent, but I decided to go with it because maybe it's a nice effect. So I then proceeded to put the resin in the mold and used my UV lamp to cure it. Now was the time to find out how well it really worked, so I pushed them out of the mold and they were perfect. I couldn't be happier about the result. Since I had to use such a small amount of UV resin, I had a lot of it left over, so I decided to just pour it in an eye mold so that I could use it later and not waste anything. They all were a bit sticky still, so I used some rubbing alcohol to get rid of it. I then had to sand off some imperfections that were the result of overpouring the resin a bit. The progress with the sandpaper was extremely slow, so I pulled out my trusty Proxon. And this is how they looked all even. I really like how they came out. I think because of the slight transparency they look even more like real wheels of roller skates. So now I needed something to put the wheels on so that they would also still spin, and I needed to push it through the shoe. For this I used these. I think they are made to make earrings or at least some kind of jewelry, but for this they were perfect. I tried to find out which one of my drills would fit best, and then I used my other Proxon tool, which is used to make very straight holes so that they wouldn't end up crooked or anything. I stuck them to a wooden stick because otherwise they would just fall right through that hole, and then I started drilling. I then did the same to the shoes. Now we're back to things going wrong again. I noticed when I tried it out that the wheels were just too close to the rubber, I think because they were a little bigger than the original ones, and also maybe I drilled the hole a little bit too high, but they wouldn't spin, so I needed to cut that whole part of the shoe off and find another way to stick the wheels on it. After considering all my options, I came to the conclusion that UV resin would have the best chances to actually stick on the rubber. So I started a lengthy process of putting a drop on the shoe and then curing it and then putting another drop until I had a good surface to drill through. I then had to put the wheels on that little piece of metal and then cut it to the right size, and then I fixated the ends with another drop of UV resin. It didn't come out perfect, the spinning of the wheels is a little wonky, and also they don't all spin always, but I think it's fine enough, and also it looks really good, so yeah. I definitely don't want to do it all again, and I guess I will just do it better next time. The worst part is that with all the unexpected fiddling around with the shoes, the paint actually rubbed off quite a bit, so I needed to touch that up later, which I was actually pretty sad about because the paint came on really smooth, and yeah, it just wasn't quite as smooth when I had to touch it up. But yeah, overall I'm pretty happy with the shoes, so it's fine. Next up is the back, so I really didn't get the color of the back. Why is it some random dark blue and doesn't even match the color of the hair or anything? So I really wanted to change the color, and more specifically I wanted it to be the same color than the shoes. So I did my best to match the color with acrylic paint, and then I made it purple, and I also did the details white again. By the way, I used acrylic paints for the shoes also, I only use gouache on the face. And this is the back. I think it matches everything so much better in purple, and also you can actually see the details now. And also with the details painted white, it actually looks like a sports bag. Now next up was the jacket, and this again was just pure struggle, and spoilers, it has a very unsatisfying outcome, but I didn't want it to be green, I wanted it to be white. So I tried to bleach it, or I was trying to find a way to bleach it, and I still had some fabric bleach at home, so I wondered if it would work on the jacket. My hopes were very low because it is a very synthetic kind of material, so I'm guessing it's nylon or something, so I wasn't sure if I could even get the color out, but yeah, I definitely wanted to try. So I followed the instructions. It said that the best results are with a 24-hour bleach in 30 degrees hot water, so I did that and I waited a whole 24 hours to come back to the jacket. And of course, it was all to find out that it did nothing. I could have sewed her another one, but that would have meant that I had to rip it apart or cut it apart. And yeah, I mean, destroy it, because I had to find out the pattern, and I really didn't want to do that because I thought it was already so perfect. And I also liked the material. I didn't have any material like this at home, so yeah, I needed to keep trying. I gave up on the idea that I could somehow get it white, so I thought maybe I can at least get it blue to match the hair. And for this I was able to try another new thing. So I had this blue PT lying around at home. I might have only had it because I played the new Coffee Talk, just maybe. Anyway, it has a really strong color and also a very fitting color, I thought. And also I read on the internet that with a little bit of acid you would be able to dye synthetic fibers, so I thought I would give it a shot. So I cooked it up and put the flowers in there and waited until they gave a lot of their color. So as you can see, the water turned really blue. So for the acid, if you know anything about blue PT, if you put any acid in there, it turns purple, so I couldn't put in too much because I still wanted it to be blue. So here's me putting a little bit of vinegar in there, and it just looks really amazing. Like, I mean, look at it, it's magical. So then I put the jacket in there and I let it sit in there simmering for maybe half an hour or an hour or something, and then I came back and long story short, it did nothing, so let's just not talk about it anymore. I think another option would have been grit dye. I saw that used by a lot of people, but I really didn't want to buy any for that, so I just accepted that I needed to keep it green and I would just figure something out later to kind of match it to the rest of the outfit. And we're getting closer to the end of the makeover. I obviously kept her hair, but I really wanted to give her a new hairstyle, and in my mind I had Dutch braids. So I parted her hair, but I left some little front hair to frame her face, and then I started braiding. I give you a little montage, so it looks like it was way less painful than it actually was, but the hair was very stubborn, it's very stiff, and also because of the size of the doll it was not very long, and also it was layered, so yeah, it was very springy and it just jumped everywhere and it was just really hard. I noticed that if I braided it all the way down, that the hair would just jump out of the braids because of the layers, so I decided to keep the Dutch braid part at the top and then just tie the rest into normal pigtails. I think Dutch braids are just the perfect choice for her hair because look at how beautifully the colored streaks distribute here. With some heat and a metal chopstick, I got the front hair to lay down a little bit better. I then also wanted to hide the hair tie, so I took a small section of hair on each side and wrapped it around. Like I said, the hair is very springy, so I had a hard time keeping it around the braid without going everywhere. So I used a little bit of PVA glue and some water to kind of use it as a hair gel. I don't like to actually glue anything to the hair or glue the hair because I kind of want everything to be removable and to be like it would be in real life. But I thought the PVA glue with the water would work more as kind of a hair gel, so in this case I found it okay. I still had to pull the hair through the hair tie so that it would hold up like this, so I still had a little section in the back that needed to be covered up, and for that I planned on using a hair clip, and this was the perfect opportunity to fix the situation with the jacket. I had this little heartbeat that just had the perfect color, but I only had one, so I couldn't use it anyway, which I was kind of sad about. But then I found these ones that are slightly green, so they would fit to the jacket. Now I had an excuse as to why the jacket could be green, and I just formed a little U shape out of a wire, and then I stuck the hearts onto it, and then I stuck everything to the hair. Now the last part was just replacing the earrings that I found so hideous, and I just wanted to give her normal hoops. For this I used a very hard wire and I just formed the round shape. I used special jewelry tongs for that, and then I also twisted the part that would go in her head a bit so that it would hold up on its own. And that was the last part, and this is how she looks all put together. I hope you like her as much as I do. She actually turned out exactly like I imagined. Well, minus the jacket. But with the matching hairpins, I think even this is fine. All in all, everything fits together so much better, and if I saw her in a store like this, she would actually stand out to me with a cute design. And if you like this custom, I have so many more dolls that I want to make and so many ideas, which I am going to film, so you can subscribe if you don't want to miss it. I already know which my next project is going to be, and it's going to be a much bigger transformation and not just a makeover. I hope I'll see you again then. Bye!